The streets of Asheville were cold and still. Snow fell steadily, blanketing the town in a quiet hush, as the faint glow of street lamps illuminated the otherwise darkened sidewalks. Both townsfolk and mountaineers who had made the long journey scurried about in heavy coats and scarves, eager to escape the biting wind. Their arms were filled with packages and gifts for the next morning. For city folks, this was a time of warmth and celebration, of feasting family. And for the rural folks, this was one of the few pilgrimages they made to town each year. But this was a special one, a chance to spend the precious little money that they had earned a year before selling their tobacco and corn crops, and to turn it into new shoes for their children, or perhaps a new dress for the woman of the house. Down the narrow valley, which was little more than a dirt path, just off of Pack Square, a little girl in a dirty blue dress and a paper-thin coat wandered aimlessly. Her name was Eliza May, a frail slip of a child, with blonde curls tumbling over her thin shoulders. Her feet were red and raw from the cold, and they were bare. She had left their small cabin about 2 miles out of town, wearing her mother's old slippers, but they were too large for her small feet. She lost one as she was crossing the icy cold creek on her way into town. The other one had slipped off as she darted across the street to avoid an oncoming horse and wagon, when a freckled-faced boy quickly snatched it up, laughing cruelly, and began using it as an improvised bat to launch pebbles into the air before running off with it. In her arms, Eliza carried a bundle of matches, wrapped in a wore-out apron. She'd been trying to sell them all day, trudging through the streets as the snow began to fall. Her tiny voice called out, "Matches? Please, sir, just a penny for some matches. Can't you spare a penny?" But the cries it went unheard amidst the bustling crowd. As darkness fell, the windows of Asheville's shops began to glow with warm, golden light from the fireplaces that illuminated them. Eliza stopped to take a look through one window. Inside, there was a family gathered around a crackling fire. A decorated Christmas tree stood tall in the corner. Above the mantel were several candles that cast a soft, flickering light over the faces of children who were busy unwrapping early Christmas gifts. A bit of the heat of the home found its way through the cracks of the window frame, and they also carried the savory smell of roasted ham, which only made the mountain girl's stomach growl painfully. But the truth is, even as cold and hungry as she was, now there was little reason to make the long journey back to her mountain cabin that she shared with her father. That ramshackle cabin, with its leaking roof and its missing chinks, offered little protection from the outside wind, as it whipped through the inside of the cabin with such force it nearly extinguished the flames of the small fireplace. Worse still, her father would surely beat her for coming home empty-handed again. Get someone you love the gift of old-fashioned storytelling. 2 volumes packed with stories that'll make your heart smile. Visit theappalachianstory.com to pick up your copy today. So there she was, shivering cold, and Eliza turned down a quieter street and huddled in the corner of a stone building near the Methodist church. The cold seemed to seep into her bones, and her little fingers were blue with frostbite. She trembled as she clutched her matches. "Oh, maybe just one. I'll only light one," she whispered to herself, pulling a match from the bundle and striking it against the rough stone wall. She watched as it sputtered to life. The small flame brought immediate warmth, and in its glow, she saw something extraordinary. The dark, snow-covered street transformed right before her very eyes. She was no longer in Asheville, but suddenly She was sitting in front of a roaring fire. An old iron stove, with polished brass feet, stood before her, radiating a comforting heat. She stretched out her feet, desperate to soak in the warmth. But as the match burned down and the tiny flame disappeared, so too did Eliza's vision. The stove vanished, leaving her alone in the freezing street as the sound of the church bells rang out, signaling the 7 o'clock evening hour. Desperate to feel that warmth again, Eliza struck another match. This time, the light spread across the wall like a golden curtain. And she saw a long wooden table laid out with a Christmas feast. Oh, there were platters of roasted turkey and glazed sweet potatoes that glistened underneath the glow of candlelight. There was also a cast iron skillet full of hot buttered cornbread, sitting beside a dish of spiced apples, and pumpkin pie, too, still steaming. It filled the room with the scent of cinnamon and nutmeg. Just as Eliza reached out for the food, the match went out, and she was left staring at the cold, unyielding wall of that church. Her hand shook as she lit a third match. The flame danced higher this time, revealing a magnificent Christmas tree in the middle of the square. Its branches were draped with garlands of cranberries and popcorn, and tiny candles flickered like stars. Around the base of the tree, it was lots of presents, wrapped in brown paper and tied with the best twine. Eliza's heart swelled as she imagined opening one of those gifts. Maybe, just maybe, there would be a pair of warm socks, or even a thick wool blanket. Anything to keep the cold at bay. She reached out to try and touch him, but once again, the match burned out and the vision disappeared. Above her, the night sky cleared momentarily, revealing a single falling star. And just then, Eliza remembered her grandmother's gentle voice, telling her long ago that a falling star meant that someone's soul was rising to heaven. Tears welled in her eyes as she struck another match, and this time the flame brought her grandmother back to life. There before her eyes was the old woman, glowing in warmth and love. Her gentle face, blind with the years of hardship and kindness, were just as Eliza remembered her, soft and familiar. "Grandma," Eliza cried, with her voice crackling with emotion, "take me with you. Please, Grandma, please don't leave me here." Her grandmother knelt down and cupped Eliza's frozen hands in her own. "I'm here, child," she whispered softly. "I won't leave you." Eliza hurriedly struck all of the remaining matches at once, desperate to keep her grandmother close. The light flared brightly, illuminating the entire square, and for a brief, beautiful moment, it felt as though all the cold and hunger had melted away. Her grandmother wrapped her arms around Eliza, and together they rose above the snowy streets, higher and higher, until they were surrounded by warmth and light. There was no pain, no cold, and only peace. The next morning, as the Christmas sun rose over a ash field, a shopkeeper found Eliza's small, lifeless body leaning against the Methodist church wall. Her cheeks were pale, but her lips held the faintest trace of a smile. The bundle of matches still laid in her lap, charred and spent.